you'd have to say that, I know that's prima facie right now, it hasn't been proven, there's no verdict yet, but this has to be a scathing observation. Never happened in the history of cricket where a BCCI president is now accused of perjury.
Well, yes, I don't know how, what the repercussion is, because, I mean, perjury sounds like a fabulous word legally, and I know in various other nations it means a lot of punishment.
Right.
But in India, I can't remember, of course, we'll ask Desh later on, too many people getting locked up because of perjury. Of course, it's a major crime as far as we're concerned internationally. But I think it's getting obfuscated in terms of dates, and which is why a lot of people may say, why isn't the Supreme Court saying, we think you're guilty of perjury, 10 years? They're just saying, well, we'll see, what do you apologize? People are saying, well, you can just apologize for a crime. But in this case, perhaps the board does know that they're not here, beg your pardon, the Supreme Court is not here to crush the board. They're only here to try and sort of make them follow a straight and narrow line. And which is why, once again, I'm not sure that Kapil Sibal should be apologizing for Mr. Thakur. I think Mr. Thakur should really apologize quickly enough. And that may be the end of that, because there are much bigger matters which surround this whole situation, not just one little perjury situation, not little, one perjury situation.
Okay, I'm going to get two clarifications from you, Desh. Firstly, in brief, like he mentioned, it should be Anurag Thakur, but would you say that the council is representing Anurag Thakur, and in this case, if he apologizes, it is as good as Anurag Thakur apologizing?
I think at some point they're going to ask for a written apology, and that's where things get really tricky for the BCCI's president. Because once you have an apology which clearly contradicts what he'd already said in his first affidavit, then it's no longer assumed perjury, it is actually perjury, right? And that's when they actually have some sort of a claim against, saying that you clearly lied to us on record, and now that's been proven. Right now it's two contrasting opinions on what really transpired at the ICC meeting.
May I interject just to find out, what has perjury led to in India so far at such a scale with the Supreme Court? Have people been locked up?
No, it's a very hard charge too. Defamation and perjury are very hard charges.
So I read the law books, it says, I mean, somewhere between 3 to 7 years, that's what the law books say, but it's never happened, as Charu asked?
I mean, I don't think, in sports at least, it's never happened. I'm sure there have been cases over the years where perjury has led to some minor sentences, because it's very hard to, again, really tack what the gravity of the problem is.
The other thing that one can't help but notice is that the Supreme Court has said, apologize and we'll let you go. I mean, if it's such a serious offense, should apologizing suffice?
See, again, I don't think they feel it's that serious an offense. They think it's, at some point, it's going to be used as leverage. I think if he says clearly that I've lied under oath, they can actually prove a case that he's not fit to lead the #1 sports federation possibly in the world. So I think it may be a compromise where he says, I'll admit that I did wrong, but I will step aside as the BCCI president.
Okay, do you agree with that? I mean, that's very interesting. So it's not just perjury as such, but it's a larger picture that the court is looking at.
Which is where I began, because it's a much larger picture. And in a sense, I suppose, to use cricketing terms, it's a question of putting the BCCI, now president, on the back foot, saying, all right, well, sorry, hang on now. I'm not going to attack anymore. Because the BCCI, right or wrong, in my opinion, perhaps wrongly, has been confronting the Supreme Court for all these months. Now, I don't think you can get away with such blatant confrontation. I really think, now maybe it's too late to say that, but they really should have been talking to the Lodha Commission a lot earlier, before the matter got to the Supreme Court, and I'm sure they could have gotten many things rationalized, if not turned around, because there are a few areas where people might legitimately claim that there's been an overreach. And that's because there was no conversation, no discussion, and no attempt to let the Lodha Commission know that these actually are a little impractical. So that's what's led, this confrontation, this wall has led to the hardening of lines and the deepening of the rut between the Supreme Court and the BCCI, which is why you'll now see a situation where the court is not likely to take anything lightly. And you mentioned, is this going to be somewhere along the way the end of the BCCI boss or whatever? Yeah. Now, all of them are actually not eligible.
Okay.
They're not eligible. Sorry, so I won't jump the gun.
No. We'll get into it, but one word I wanted from Deshra. We see certain discrepancies, because I'm looking at some other cases, not that we look at court cases all the time, but we remember another case of Subrata Sahara just short while ago. Contempt of court, he was sent to jail. Many would say that perjury is a graver crime to commit.
Yes, but I think you have to see what exactly he lied about, if he did in fact lie.
Right.
He lied about requesting a letter which in the future may have led to them being de-recognized by the ICC, which is going to be a long shot in any case. So I think, as Charu mentioned, if cleaning up the sport is the primary goal of this entire proceeding, they'll opt for letting him go slightly lighter than they would have otherwise done so.
Okay, stay with us. Lots more to discuss. Now, apart from the BCCI president's perjury matter, the BCCI versus Lodha case on the whole saw some major developments in the Supreme Court today. Now, Justice Thakur asked BCCI to suggest names for people to run the BCCI. Now, this after the Indian board rejected the names suggested by amicus curiae Gopal Subramaniam, including that of former Home Secretary G.K. Pillai. So, the Supreme Court has given the BCCI 1 week to suggest names of people who they think can run Indian cricket. For now, the Supreme Court has reserved its order. The verdict is expected to be delivered on or before the 3rd of January 2017. Okay. I know it's never good. Rika is with us. I know, Rika, it's never good to assume things. But would you say like this is a hint by the Supreme Court that this is the end of the current BCCI regime? Because, I mean, they're suggesting that come up with names for the panel that will run BCCI. So, effectively, it will be a panel that will be running the BCCI when the verdict comes out?
Okay, Nikhil, basically the Supreme Court is not happy with the fact that BCCI rejected G.K. Pillai's name, which is why they have asked BCCI to come up with more names. But the indications are very, very clear that a panel of observers will now be put in place. Now, what exactly will be their function will have to be decided after further discussion between the Supreme Court and the Lodha Commission. But what I understand is that this new panel will oversee the implementation of Lodha Committee's recommendations. It will also possibly be handing out all the contracts. Over 100 contracts need to be handed out to different parties over the course of next 3 months. So this panel is going to oversee all of that. We can't say right now that the current set of administrators will be sacked as soon as the panel is put in place, but that will happen in due course, Nikhil, once the set of overseers come in.
Okay, Rika, thanks so much for that clarification. Charu, you wanted to continue on that, or is it the end of the current regime?
Well, I think that was on the cards anyway, because one of the recommendations is that you can't hold a post over, or you can't be an official for more than 9 years. Now, almost all the top brass is over 9 years, so they have to go anyway under the Lodha recommendations. And many of the problems that are being created are because this lot says, no, we don't want to go. We want to serve the cause of cricket. But I mean, there are others, frankly. You know, who's indispensable? None of us here, and I'm sure none of them there. So this indispensability situation has to now be done away with. Let's just rewind a bit. If all of them are removed, will the board not function? Of course it can, because there are many other qualified and capable people in a country of 1.3 billion people. This whole interim panel that we were talking about, of course, I think you're right that if G.K. Pillai, I think Rika said, has not been approved for, I believe it was earlier in the day, for vested or some, what's it called, interest?
Conflict of interest.
Unbelievable. Somebody please, you know, let me know what is the conflict of interest. I mean, is the son playing cricket for India or what? Where? Does he own some stadium? So I find that a little ridiculous. But this panel that now the Supreme Court wants the board to suggest, remember, is only an interim panel, because work has to be done. But where do the BCCI officials come from anyway? From the rest of the state associations. So it's just a temporary thing to keep cricket going. Okay. And once the state associations fall in line, once again, those people who come up and bubble up to the top of the BCCI will assume BCCI positions, as has been the norm. So it's just a temporary thing to keep things going. The Supreme Court doesn't want to crush cricket in India. Right. It just wants it to carry on in a more straight and narrow, organized fashion, less autocratic and more transparent. So that's, to my mind, very simply why a panel is needed in the short run.
Okay. There's the other thing I'm scratching my head over is the point that the BCCI has been now asked by the Supreme Court come up with names and suggest names that can be part of that panel. Now, on one hand, the BCCI is found guilty, and I say BCCI because the BCCI president is BCCI, guilty of perjury, or prima facie, as they're saying, guilty of perjury, and it's the same BCCI now that has been asked to now select names. So, I mean, is there not a conflict there?
I think what they're trying to do is give them due process, and I think allowing them to be a
so
part.
So the word won't count for anything once they come up with names.
So I think also what they're trying to do is find some worthwhile candidates who have a stronger nexus to cricket. And I think when they mentioned conflict of interest, it's because I believe there were some independent directorships that he may have been a part of.
Sure.
Mr. Pillai, which may be doing business with the BCCI at some point or with the IPL.
I see. Well, that's what we needed to know. But you mentioned perjury and BCCI. I think it's only an individual. It's not that the BCCI is guilty of perjury, only an individual. So there are many others within the BCCI who are perfectly within their rights to suggest names to run the BCCI for a while.
The reason I asked is because the BCCI president is synonymous with the BCCI. I'm going back to the N. Srinivasan issue. It all started as a personal matter, but
it
the
is
BCCI
not a one-man board.
Right,
Let's get that right.
Of course, yeah.
No, but again, I think they're trying to prove that it's not a witch hunt over here. And they're also recognizing that India is predominant in terms of performance as well over the last year or so, and that in many ways it has been run as the best run sports federation in India, which may not say a lot, but I think they're trying to get them to be as involved in the transition process as possible.
Okay, fine.
Best run and successfully run or commercially successfully run may be different.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Agreed.
Okay, final word to you. Now, is there a perception issue as well as far as this case is concerned? Because, there's a clear divide there. The ones on the BCCI side would say that the Supreme Court is being very harsh. The ones on the outside are saying that no, the Supreme Court is being very lenient as far as the BCCI is concerned.
Precisely. The reason why people are a little confused about what's going on and why it's taken so long. So let's deal with the latter first. There's no doubt that cricket fans are saying, why can't the Supreme Court, crush the board?
Right.
Because the Supreme Court's, in its infinite wisdom, and I do believe there are very wise people there, said we're not here to ruin the game or to crush it. We are here only under a mandate to try and straighten the process. The BCCI sadly has taken a hugely confrontational line, which to me was the wrong line, because now it's hardened situations. And why did it all happen? You have to rewind all the way to the beginning when some of the state associations weren't running matters very well. A lot of other state associations and administrators are fabulous people. They've done a very good job. But if you're wearing a necklace and one little bead or one little area gets weak, the necklace will fall.
Sure.
And that's why one or two associations not running matters well led to a situation where there are all sorts of appeals to the courts to try and straighten matters. And that has in fact come down to ruin the entire board. If their stand had been more humble and not as, what's the word here, opposite of that?
Aggressive?
Yeah, aggressive. I think this matter would not have reached where we are today. I think it would have been sorted out a lot earlier. So that lack of humility as well as lack of understanding the powers and the reach of the Supreme Court, I think has been terrible for the board, sadly.